sharpen a chain quite a lot before you sort of have diminishing returns over it, but it would take me another 20 minutes to get through 72 teeth.
Yep.
And switching it right now is pretty fast. Do you have a prompt for the conversation? Or is it just, yeah. In my 20s, I got these tattoos that say now and here on my wrists. And it was an idea that like place doesn't matter. That you make your life whatever it's going to be in that place. I still have a little bit of belief in that, but I think that it matters, like place has mattered more to me now than it did then. And that's not to say like you can't make something beautiful out of wherever you are. I think that's true. But we were searching for a place that would provide an opportunity to be creative in how we live and creative in how we raise our child. And we felt a little stuck in the Midwest in that respect, just because we had known it so long that it was almost like we had to remove ourselves from the assumptions of the place we were in and how we might feel about it in order to arrive at a situation that would be new enough to all of us that we would discover new things about how we wanted to live and how we wanted to relate to the land. And then we found a property that's just big enough to explore those things at a reasonable scale. 10 acres is not huge, and it feels smaller the more I work at it, and more manageable for how we want to start to poke away at growing things for subsistence and finding ways to make our lives occur outside of the four walls more significantly.
Could I replace if I stepped out from this space? If I stepped out from the ground beneath
I'd like to introduce my friend Mikey here. Mikey and his family moved up from St. Louis a year or so ago, year and a few months. I'm intrigued to know the motivations behind it. I think I do, but kind of as a prompt, I read an interview with Wendell Berry. I think there's like a trend to go find yourself in the woods, or going into nature to find yourself, and he was essentially making the argument that if you're living with land and specifically with like agrarianism in mind, you don't go to find yourself, you actually go to lose yourself, because you are suddenly integrated in this much larger ecosystem that you can affect and can affect you, both in positive and negative ways. So
I like that idea.
I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's still early days for me.
Sure.
As a response, but I do feel that way. Like, I've for a good portion of my 20s, I read a lot and explored a bit. Started gardening with the limited urban scenarios that I was presented. I read a lot of things like Fukuoka that got me very engaged in how we relate to our land base, and that was the sort of agrarian or agricultural side of it. I read a lot of Derek Jensen, which is cultural side of it, but very much like how are we as a culture or civilization living in relation to our land base. I mean, that's sort of his specific litmus test, is like, what does this culture do to its land? And you'll have an idea of how the culture is organized and where its priorities lie.
Right, what its values are.
Yeah. So I can't remember what this plant is, but it's a really unique Northwest native that only grows in the stump of a downed conifer. And so we have a couple of them around where they shoot up, and it's this really pretty shrub that only does this as its like ecological niche. It won't grow in open soil, but they're really pretty. There's one down there too. The issue with hollies is not that like I really think they're a detriment to the landscape here. They are trees that have found a place here, even though they're not native. But what they do is, you can see that they root from mother-daughter and create new trees, and so they sort of colonize an area and make it less palatable towards other plant species that might be able to find a place here.
Yeah.
So I'm not on like a single species quest to eradicate it, but it is something that's in the way of doing other things.
You gonna grab that?
Sorry, little maple.
Casualty of war.
Hot up in the soft
Stood no chance.
So using chainsaw, come around to face the person.
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these trees aren't that big, but the principle here is you have an escape route sort of at 60 degree angles, yeah. So that if it starts moving one way or the other, you can get away. These little ones are like, they're not gonna like flip up and catch you in the chest and impale you, but
It's a general
a
principle.
bigger tree might.
Yeah.
Ready? Once it's been loosened like that. Got one down.
Oh yeah. Mikey with the yank.
Not a safety video.
You mean you standing on the log you're cutting?
Yeah, it's like when you said about losing yourself, that is actually a very apt description of how I feel about doing things here. I spend as much time as I can here in the absence of having a house to just like walk out your door and do something. But I get lost in whatever it is that the land seems to ask for, or like my interpretation of how we want to relate to it. Because honestly, like, it's not asking for anything. We could leave all of the invasives here and they would form a culture of plants that are totally fine. Like, they have a niche.
Yeah.
I'm engaged in often like this thing that is pointed towards a use for us, and then a lot of like a kind of human interpretation of restoration. And I don't know any other way to do it other than to say, like, I see wild places like when we went to the Cascades, and it gives me new ideas and information about like how to cultivate some wildness back into this place that it's been occupied by people for a long time here. I mean, this is not virgin land, but you see patches of how fecund the land is, and to like further encourage that growth and vibrancy and diversity is what I'm interested in doing. And then we're also building a house, so like all these stumps that we've made gives me a little bit of heartburn.
Yeah.
Because the woods were kind of nice just the way they were.
Yeah. No, I hear that. I feel like there's a feeling you get every time you cut a tree down.
Yeah.
But you're also planting a bunch of trees, so you're balancing that out in the way you can.
Yeah, I look at it on like a 200-year time scale. So the things that I'm doing by planting rootstock and saplings and the shrubs, I'll see through fruition, but the firs and stuff, like I might see them 40 feet tall, maybe.
Yeah.
But especially like down in the wetland, it was so full of invasives and aged out alders that I look around and I want to encourage something for the 200-year time scale that somebody else would be like, that had some beneficial impact on that area, because year over year as I work on certain parts of this, even in the first couple of years that we've been doing stuff, you clear out invasives and all of a sudden you discover that there's all of these native ferns and bleeding heart below, and they get a little bit of light and all of a sudden they just flourish.
Yeah.
When they were covered up with blackberries, they kind of stayed there, but they didn't flourish.
That whole like 200-year time scale, the continuity of people living with the land is really what creates a robust culture.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like you and I are trying to connect with more.
I can see things that were done a long time ago, and then a lot of this was just left alone for decades. And so some things tolerated that absence of human intervention in a really good way, and other things like the blackberry and holly trees are so aggressive that in the absence of human intervention in this climate with those types of plants, or like all of this English ivy that crawls up trees and chokes them out, I feel like the place kind of needs a little touch.
Yeah. There's very few forests that have no human touch, even ancient ones.
Yeah.
So.
Lay down material, I just basically like lay it down across slope so that it just helps to force trapping flow that comes off of each side. I know this is sort of a squeeze, but I thought like coming through here would be,
Yeah.
so like this guy is just in our way, so I'm just gonna clip it. But it's got, this whole plant is still good, and nothing will go to waste here. So that here, this becomes a path, and this is so we'll just kind of like bring these back until we get over here. Nice walk on this side.
Double pass for a little bit.
Cross
Like,
over
there
there.
could be a crossing right here.
Zigzag a little bit more.
Yeah, it could cross right here and then cross back.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like in this spot, if we wanted to make this a crossing, we'll just like pile a whole bunch of rocks over here and stabilize this slope and then run that way.
And then we'll come back up this way.
Yeah. And among the ferns.
Yeah.
So that first crossing will be a short one. You just kind of go through the two alders. I don't know what the threshold is for space, but 10 acres is not a big garden. And so I also had to shift my mindset about how to think about doing work and projects over something that you can't like see in one view
Yeah.
and pay attention to in one view. And that's part of the reason I've been reluctant to get any piece of bigger machinery than a chainsaw and the weed whacker. These are powerful tools. They also force me to do a lot of walking and a lot of observation while I'm doing kind of creative destruction
Yeah.
on things, hacking away a blackberry or removing holly or whatever it is. It forces me to walk every square foot of the property and revisit it several times at different points of the year. And I've been able to observe some really unique things by doing it that way. So I think I'm going to continue to like resist getting a mower, and God forbid a tractor, because it's just not suited for how wet sometimes the property is.
I think that's a very sensible approach.
This is so small that walking it a lot seems useful.
Yeah.
Taking out one side of it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. So this is my general strategy, is like take stuff down, chop it up, pile it. Yeah. I was thinking like sort of pick away at some of these other things first. Okay. And that one. But you'll get some more light into the house. Do not disturb past there.
Yep. That big one?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the face cut, so the direction of lean was generally that way. And I put a 45-degree face cut in first. And then you come back with a cut that matches grade. Not significant, but there's a possibility of what's called a barber chair. And the barber chair happens when you've got a lot of lean, so there's a lot of tension back here. So if you were to just like put a notch, a face cut in here, and you start to put a back cut in, what can happen is you've just relieved all this tension pressure on the back side of the tree, and it'll split right up the middle of the tree. So the barber chair like basically punches up, and it can kill you. I mean, if you're not in the right place, like that's a
Come back and hit you.
it can snap back this way.
Damn.
So to alleviate that danger on a tree that's leaning like this, you put a shallower face cut in, and so it'll come to like from here. Normally you'd be cutting down much lower, but for us we want to leave some stump in. So we'll come as high as we can to about there and put a shallow face cut in. And then we're going to leave a back strap and a notch. And so we'll come with a bore cut and go straight through the middle of the tree next to where that notch is going to be. And then we'll come back to leave that strap in place. And so now the tree has compression on the hinge and tension on that back strap. And so at this point, you can either finish the cut through or come back and just complete the back cut that way. It looks like it wants to fall there.
Yeah.
So we kind of want it to fall there where there's a little more open space.
Okay.
Um,
And then
Actually, you know what? We might do that one first. That one's going to have tendency to just go straight over here.
Nice work.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's a fair amount. I'm cutting all these a little smaller because these are all intended for the wood stove. So the camp ones have been leaving like nice and big, but these are more like 16 inches or so.
Made quite a dent in the house site preparation in just a few days. We've collected quite a bit of firewood for the future wood stove. Maple, cedar, and alder, so nothing is going to waste. Making the best of a less than ideal situation, which would be cutting trees down in the first place. But as Mikey said, many more will be planted, and they will have a very nice little home right in the middle of these woods.
I grew up in suburban Chicago and lived in the city of St. Louis. I've worked with small gardens, but 10 acres is like a complete unknown.
Yeah.
And all of the education I had with landscape design is useful to an extent, and it like allows me to think at a big scale, time and space. Everything is a sort of wonderful set of accidents, mishaps, and discoveries. I try to learn as much as I can and start slow and small. And that's sort of the approach I've taken to things that are a little less dangerous too.
Yeah.
Do something and see how it reacts and see how the land reacts to it before you like mow everything down or plant a gazillion things. And it took 3 years of walking around the orchard to actually discover that, oh, this is actually the spot where the next set of trees want to go. I had no idea until this spring that that was like a really prime piece of that part of the property to plant more stuff in. And I don't know why I overlooked it or just didn't note. I wasn't sensitive enough to what was happening with the soil in the spring, adjacent soils, and the kind of condition of wetness that comes from across my neighbor's property.
Yep.
And it was just like a moment I was walking through it and I realized like that's the spot. And had I done something, had I just planted out like 150 trees, it would have been not disastrous, but like what a waste of planning.
Yeah, and time.
Yeah. And that's the root of what you were asking earlier, is like getting lost within it or losing yourself to it resonates with me because I don't know what I'm doing, but I have the opportunity with this project, like, that this is my life's work now. Like, my career is fine, but my career is no longer my life's work. This like little 10-acre lot is my life's work.
Yeah.
And so just picking away at it slowly and not rushing things seems like, even when you make a mistake, it's like, well, the land's going to do something else with that mistake and it'll be fine.
homestead anytime. I will find home. I will find home. I will find home when the time